Welcome to Coconut Chats, everyone. Today you've got me, Harita, and my co-host, Chris. How are you going, Chris?
Morning, Rita. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. So for those of you that have been listening to our podcast for a while now, welcome back. And for those of you who are new time listeners, and this might be your first episode, Coconut Chats is a podcast where we aim to break the barriers of stigmatized topics within our South Asian and Indian society. So today we're interviewing Ira Singhal. So Ira is an Indian Administrative Service Officer and computer science engineer. She was the highest scoring individual in the UPSC's Civil Services examination for the year 2014, and she has been in office since 2016. But that's not all. She's also got scoliosis, which is a spine-related disorder which disrupts arm movement. However, she hasn't let this stop her from having an extremely successful career in life. Hi, Ira. What an honor to have you here today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So we'll get on with the questions. First things first, how has having scoliosis shaped your life?
I was very lucky that I was born in a family which didn't believe that disability is meant to change or shape your life in any way. So, ever since I was a child, I was told that this is your disability because we were constantly visiting doctors and all sorts of treatments. And trust me, we've tried out every treatment possible out there. And I always knew that this is my disability and this is what we have to work at. And but beyond that, my parents kind of forced me to be as good in school as any other child in the family. I was in a joint family growing up, and that I think was a very big positive because, the parameters set for me in terms of performance, in terms of participation and things were the same as everybody else. And in some cases, maybe higher than others. So I was never made to think that my disability makes me less in any way or that it is an excuse which allows me to underperform at anything or to say that I can't do this because I have a disability. Of course, I wasn't excellent at sports just because I was short and I had this problem, but that didn't mean that I didn't do other things. So I did theater, I did dance, I did all sorts of other competitions, painting. And God, I'm terrible at painting, but I was still in all the competitions. So my parents sort of pushed us to participate in everything and, at least try. And disability was never an excuse to not do things. So in that respect, disability didn't get to shape my life. While unfortunately for most people, it's the family themselves that makes such a big deal about their disability, and hence it ends up shaping their life. But in my case, that didn't happen, and I was very, very, very lucky. And I realized that because I see kids with disability these days, and the whole family is constantly thinking, "Oh my God, poor him," and "Oh my God, we have a child with this problem." And I've seen people with polio who were and polio is just in your leg, but they were made to feel like they were mentally disabled because they had polio and they weren't given tasks in the family. And this is normal with people with disabilities. What happens is, if that person can't lift their books, what you do is you also try to work for him, which isn't a problem for them. But people try to overcompensate and then lower the performance standards for them. And hence, disability ends up becoming the main, identifying factor for those people. But I was lucky that didn't happen to me, and I wasn't allowed to think like that. And that was so disability became a part of who I was, but it didn't change who I was in any way.
Yeah. So you said, your family treated you just like everyone else. And I guess the next thing I wanted to ask was, how were you treated at school? Because at school, you're obviously there with other kids your age. And, sometimes kids just say the first thing in their mind without actually thinking what they're saying. So how was your schooling experience, like your family aside?
Um, I'll be very honest, I was lucky in schooling as well. Because I was one of the smartest kids in school. Like I got, I was amongst the top three or top four constantly. So, and in India, in schools, all that matters is how well you're doing in studies. And if you're a nice person, right? If you are friendly, if you help people out, and if you're, there. So and actually ended up being a class monitor most of the time because I was also like super sincere and the one who followed all the rules. So I had a lot of friends. Like almost all of the class was my friend, and I think I was good at listening as well. So, kids tease you. I do believe this. If you make a big deal about your disability and you feel underconfident about it, then the world sees that and they play on it. Because I didn't do that, I think I never got those reactions as well. Yes, there would always be people who would know that you are that kid and they would talk about you and all. But what I found since childhood was that if you behaved normally and if you reacted to them normally and you acted like there was nothing wrong with you, they'd start thinking that too. So I see kids today, like for example, even as an adult, I see kids who turn around and look at me and they're like, what is that person? And that's so strange. And, they question their parents and they go, oh my God, mom, look at that, or point out to their siblings. I could feel bad about it and I could feel like, oh my God, why are they looking at me? But the way I see it is if I saw someone like me, I'd be curious too. If I saw someone who looked like me, I would also turn around and try to show that to a friend of mine. If you're sitting in a room and an elephant walks in, you automatically will look at the elephant because it's something different, right? So the way I see it is I just look different and they're curious and I pass them a smile and they smile back and we become friends. So I think it's also about if you treat yourself as someone to be ashamed of, then the world will make you feel ashamed. And I have never done that because I believe that I had talents that, I could perform and I was good enough for most things. So not everybody is good at everything. There are kids who aren't even good at things that I was. So, that helped. And like I said, it's your self-image, which obviously your family helps with. So in school, even if someone thought something, this thing, there wasn't about anything about me that they could say was less than them, except that I was the shortest kid in school. So I would always be in the front of every row and every classroom. So yeah, that's about it. And I made friends very easily. So that I think helped.
That's really good, just to see your positive mindset and also how, like, it's like your family made you be positive, I'm assuming, like, if your family were not positive about your disability, that would reflect on you and you probably wouldn't be positive either, but you learned from home to you're just everyone else, and that reflected in everything else in your life. So now I want to focus a little bit on how scoliosis affected your career a little bit. So I read online when I was, doing my research about you that having scoliosis made it quite difficult for you to take up a role in office and that you were refused a posting when you first passed your exams, even though you cleared your exams on the first attempt. And for those of you that don't know, these exams are very, very difficult. So passing on the first attempt is a huge achievement in itself. So can you explain to our listeners how you didn't give up and what you did about the fact that you were refused based on having scoliosis?
So just to give you a background, I worked in the corporate sector. I'm not just an engineer, I'm an MBA from one of the top business schools of India, and I was working as a strategy manager for Cadbury India Limited. Cadbury is now Kraft Foods and Mars Chocolate and all of those. So, but I believe people would know Cadbury. So I was never rejected in the corporate sector, which is more likely to reject people based on their disabilities. But that didn't happen with me. And I got like really amazing roles. And I was one of the top performers of the company and on path for high achieving careers. So, but I always wanted to work for my country and I wanted to give back something to the society. So I decided to switch my career and get into government service. And government is where you assume that everybody will be treated as equal, because government actually has a mandate to do that. But when I first gave the exam, and civil services exam is one of the top 2 or 3 toughest exams in the world, not just in India. It is the toughest of India, but it is one of the top 3 or 2 in the world. And when I say 3, then one of them is to become a wine sommelier. So in that respect, it's actually amongst the top 2 toughest in the world. So I did clear this exam, and then I find out that my disability is not amongst the list of disabilities that any of the services, except the service that I'm in currently, Indian Administrative Service, was willing to accept. And the worst part was, it wasn't that they thought that I couldn't do the job. It's just that when they were making the rule, somebody thought that they didn't like people with this kind of disability and they will not take them. There was no medical opinion. There was no logic to it. So there were 2 lists for every service. There are 2 kind of criteria for people with disabilities. One is, what is your disability? And second is, what are your abilities that are required for you to do the job? In my case, I fit in the ability criteria for every job. So whatever they needed me to do, I could do that. But because they didn't like my disability, and they just didn't, they decided to reject people with my disability in their initial list. So they were not giving me a posting, and I didn't have a good enough rank to get into the service that I am in currently. So I got a similar rank for 3 attempts, and all 3 times I was rejected based on my disability, and no service was ready to accept me, simply because even though they said that, yes, you're a person with disability who can do the job because you fulfill all the requirements of the job, but because we didn't like your disability, we're not going to take you. And that didn't seem logical to me. And actually, to be honest, I wasn't doing this just for myself. How I found out about this was that I got phone calls. After I did my first attempt, I got a rank, and I knew that it wasn't good enough to get into the service that I wanted, which was IAS, my current service. So I decided to prepare again. And while I was preparing for my second attempt, I started getting phone calls of other candidates who asked me, do you know what happened to you? Now, if somebody asks you, do you know what happened to you? And you don't know that something has happened to you, you start finding out. And that's when I found out that I had been rejected like this. And now all of these people who had called me were also people who had been rejected on grounds of their disability. So this wasn't just me that this was happening to, this was happening to others as well. And I decided to fight this in court, because I thought maybe this is, what I'm meant to solve. Like, I had come in here to make a difference, to help people, to make to make other lives better. And I thought maybe this is where I'm supposed to start. Maybe this is what my first job is meant to be. And that's why I decided, and I get into, went to court for that. And I did win my case after 3 years. But actually, the case wasn't what I call my actual achievement. That happened sometime this year. It wasn't after my case, but after my case, again, I was waiting to get a joining, and that was just not happening. And I was not getting a response from government, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen in my case. So I started preparing for a final attempt. And in my 4th attempt, I got into the IAS. But before my result for the 4th attempt came, I had started working in the IRS already, which was a service that I had opted for in those previous attempts. As in, by my rank, that's what I was getting. So it's actually when I got my rank 1 that the whole story kind of came out in the newspapers, and everybody became aware of how this was a problem, and this, the selection criteria was creating issues, that they started reworking the whole thing. And after that, the whole thing got reworked, and now there are 3,500 not jobs, but types of jobs that have been further identified for people with disabilities. So the kind of places that people can now be accepted to have expanded by that many. So it's like, you can be accepted as a chemistry professor. Now, it's not that chemistry professor at one college. That basically means chemistry professor anywhere in the government, right?
Mm.
So that kind of opens up. So let's say there are like 5,000 chemistry professor postings. So so it's going to be 3,500 into 5,000. So it's that many jobs that now have become open for people with disabilities because
Wow.
of the whole thing. So it wasn't
Yeah.
that my case managed to do that. It was actually what happened later and me getting into the IAS and the people realizing how badly this was being done that resulted in that.
Yeah, you've given this opportunity to so many other people that might be going through the same thing as you. Wow.
Yeah.
It's also about fairness, what you've done has
Yes.
set the grounds for fairness and just rules for everyone,
Yeah.
which is lacking in many areas in the Indian continent, as we already know. I'll move on to the IS bit, Ira, now. I was doing my prep, and then on this article that I came across was released by NDTV.com in 2020, which said that the number of women joining civil service, Indian civil services, is just less than about 25%. What are we not doing right as a society there? Why is that number so horribly low?
Okay, I'm going to give you an example. So 3 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I think 2019, yes, I was as the center in charge for one of the government exams that was happening in Delhi. And this was the second highest, post rank for the second highest possible ranks exam. That was the highest by the Delhi government, but second highest for the state of Delhi. The highest is us. And this was the second highest in that respect. And I was at this center and I was the head of the center and I was just, going through classes and all, just checking on people. And after a point, I realized that there were no women at the center. There were no women who were giving this exam. And I kind of called up the exam body and I asked them, is this a men only center? Because prior to that, there had been an exam for teachers where there had been only women centers and postings for only women. So there were a lot of women candidates in that. And so I called up the exam center because I thought maybe this is an only male center. And they told me, no, this was not an only male center. Now think about it. Out of 370 people, there was not a single woman who had come to give that exam. And the two people who were reporting to me at the center, so we were a hierarchy of, let's say, 5 people at that center. So I was at the top, and the ones below me, they were 2 women who had come through that same exam at some point. And I asked them, and they, for their own daughters, had not made them give that exam, had made them give the teacher exam. And the logic was, because if you become a teacher, you go to school with the child, you come back with the child, you get a vacation, you can cook your husband breakfast, you can cook him evening tea, and you can make him dinner. You will also get vacations. So, when your husband wants to take a vacation, you're already available with the children's vacation. And you can take care of the child because when the child is at home, you're at home. You can take care of your husband because he will go before you. He will come back before you. Or maybe, even if he doesn't go before you in the morning, you make all the breakfast. Because in India, our women are still supposed to prioritize family and children beyond everything else. If you're earning money, that's something extra. And that's not really something that you're meant to do. It's just something that you wanted to do, or maybe gives you a little bit more respect in your husband's family because you are giving them a pocket money as well. And your salary is actually pocket money, as and that's the main problem, that we still think of women. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't be teachers. Absolutely, women do a brilliant job. But that also means that a lot of women who are not competent or shouldn't be teachers are becoming teachers. That's also a problem because that spoils my education system. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's our the way we think as a society for girls, how we perceive our women still, and that's the reason. In fact, even when you go to the marriage thing, if a girl is a lawyer or she's a cop or she's in a respectable, those kind of powerful jobs, people's first reaction is, oh my God, she's too powerful, so we shouldn't marry her, right? Because women are still supposed to be less. And if you go into a job like civil services, you don't stay less. how do you stay less at that? So which is why we still, there are very few families that are willing to make their girls into true equals and to give that opportunity. Also, we must realize this: to get into the civil services, you have to finish your graduation and then dedicate a lot of time to this. For your family to give you the freedom to dedicate time after your graduation, instead of marrying you off because your childbearing years are going, are lessening as you grow older, so your options are lessening. That kind of freedom is not being given by most families. It's very few families that really think broad enough still to give their daughters that freedom. They'll give it to their son because the older the son is, the more number of girls he's eligible for. But they won't do that for the daughter. And we're still looking at a dowry culture, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
Yeah. I think the narrative somewhere has a lot of loopholes, but this is something that I wanted to ask recently. We've all seen the recent interview that Ms. Sneha Dubey had with President Imran Khan, Prime Minister Imran Khan, right? The way she answered back at him and all his questions. So that was a huge step moving forward, the way she took on his speech, the way she responded back. So do you think that women like yourself, women like Sneha, they are helping in change the narrative? Because what she did out there at the Global Forum was exemplary. So how do you take that? Like when I heard the speech, I was floored. I was so inspired. So can women like yourselves do the necessary in changing our mindsets about women bureaucrats or women being at the top?
I think it's every girl, not just us, every girl who's going out there and doing something in the world, every woman who's made a difference, or who's just, from a rural small village. If a girl gets a small job itself, there are other girls who get to dream. It doesn't have to be big things. It can be just small thing, like a girl from your village who got to go to college in a big city. That itself, and she had something. She had a decent life. And we're not looking at exemplary lives, but just looking at a decent life. That itself gives the courage to other parents to try that for their daughters, and for the girls to fight for that. Because in a lot of cases, the women have to fight for themselves. They have to kind of push their parents to get them that opportunities. So I do think that, not just the big stories, every single story. And this is something that I say to every girl. If you have stepped out of your house and if you're doing something out in the world, and if you're empowered in any way, there are many girls who are looking at you and who are dreaming to be like you, and who are thinking that this can happen for them. So it may not happen for all of them, but there will definitely be some who will take inspiration. Like, if you say that my cousin is doing this, then you can convince your parents easier that Didi is doing this, why can't I? And that happens. It's a trickle down effect. So I'm hoping that every girl who takes a step out is able to pull along a few more.
I absolutely agree. But the struggle is never easy, as we have to believe. It's a very hard one for the one who's making the path for the others. The other question that I had is, you partly answered that, so I was doing this prep about, and this was about Miss Anna Rajan Malhotra. So she was India's first female IAS officer. Yeah. And she had to fight and argue to get her posting, but that was like decades ago. Yes. Then there's the same story from the cell that you had to fight, although on different grounds. So have we moved ahead at all? Because if I draw a comparison, she fought, you are fighting. Have we moved at all? Or are we still in the same?
I think we have, because the challenges may look like the same, but the platforms are different. So today women are getting into the armed forces as well. So that's another big platform that has opened up. And I think in India, we're a lot better than in a lot of other countries in the world. If you know about the recent Texas law about women's abortions, at least in India, we don't have to be subjected to something like that. So I look at that and I think, oh my God, my country is better. We might judge women for what they're wearing, and we're constantly trying to modify their behavior, but at least their complete right over their, maternal rights are theirs in that respect. So I think it's everywhere that women have to struggle, but the platforms are changing, and maybe not in our lifetimes, but I'm very, very hopeful that maybe 100 years down the line, this narrative will look completely different.
I like your optimism, Ira, that
Mm.
one day in 100 years will be a different world.
Yeah. See, we have around 3,000-4,000 years of being subjugated that we need to kind of get over, right?
Yep.
We carry that baggage,
Yeah.
We need some time to get over that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ira, this was so fun. This was very enlightening to have that conversation with yourself. But before we wrap up, can I please get you to spell out your social media handles in case one of our listeners wants to get in touch with you?
Easiest to get in touch with me is Instagram or Facebook. Singhal.ira at Instagram, it's singhal.ira, and I think it's the same one at Facebook. If you search my name, I should be the top hit that you get. And I'm there on LinkedIn, but I don't really sign in much. So easiest to get me on Facebook or Instagram.
Thank you. And our listeners, as Harita's already mentioned before the start of the show, if you guys have heard us for the first time, I really hope that you've got a lot of inspiration to take away from, because we've just talked to a wonderful woman, a powerful woman at that. And if you've been hearing us for a while, I really hope that you like what we produce as a content, as a podcasting platform. But we always look forward to hearing back from you, whether it be your thoughts, positive, negative feedback, critique, comments, anything. We appreciate whatever you guys write to us. Please reach out to us at coconutchats@gmail.com. We are also available on YouTube, Facebook, and now on Instagram as well. You can just type Coconut Chats and we'll be up there. And we'll be back again shortly with another interesting episode. Till then, please stay safe and keep loving the people around you. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.